Hello, this is Vincent McDaniel, and you are listening to How to Talk to Anyone, the Social Confidence Audiobook, provided to you by United Audiobooks. I hope you enjoy my audiobook. Now, let us begin.
Introduction. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw. Have you ever walked away from an interaction feeling misunderstood? Or perhaps you've sat silently at a gathering, envying those who effortlessly weave through conversations while you struggle to formulate a single coherent thought? Maybe you've rehearsed what to say before making a phone call, only to fumble your words when the moment arrives. If any of these scenarios resonate with you, you're not alone, and you've found the solution right here. I created this audiobook because I've witnessed too many brilliant minds go unnoticed, too many valuable relationships left unformed, and too many opportunities missed, all because of conversational anxiety and underdeveloped communication skills. The truth is, effective communication isn't an innate gift bestowed upon a lucky few. It's a skill that can be learned, practiced, and mastered by anyone willing to put in the effort. Consider Michael, a software engineer whose technical brilliance was overshadowed by his inability to articulate his ideas during team meetings. His promotion was repeatedly overlooked, not because his work lacked quality, but because he couldn't effectively communicate his contributions. Or take Sarah, who dreaded social gatherings and would often cancel plans at the last minute, creating a cycle of isolation that deepened her loneliness. Then there's James, a recent college graduate who excelled academically but struggled during job interviews. His answers were technically correct, but lacked the engaging delivery that would make him memorable to potential employers. Each time he left an interview without an offer, his confidence eroded further. These stories, compilations drawn from countless real-life struggles I've encountered throughout my career, illustrate how communication difficulties can permeate every aspect of our lives. They're why I've dedicated years to studying human interaction, distilling complex psychological principles into accessible strategies that actually work in real-world situations. Beyond superficial small talk. This isn't just another audiobook filled with recycled advice about maintaining eye contact or asking open-ended questions. While those fundamentals have their place, and yes, we'll cover them, this audiobook delves deeper into the psychology behind meaningful connections. You'll learn not just what to say, but how to develop the mindset that makes authentic communication possible. I'm indebted to the behavioral psychologist, communication experts, and sociologists whose research forms the foundation of this work. Particular gratitude goes to Dr. Eleanor Ramirez, whose groundbreaking studies on conversational intelligence shaped many of the techniques presented here. The countless individuals who participated in my workshops, bravely sharing their vulnerabilities and celebrating their breakthroughs, have contributed immeasurably to my understanding of communication barriers. My approach draws from cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and social dynamics research, but presents these complex concepts in practical, actionable terms. You don't need a psychology degree to transform your communication style. You simply need the right guidance and consistent practice. Your journey begins now. Whether you're a professional looking to advance your career, a student navigating social dynamics, or simply someone who wants deeper connections with friends and family, you'll find strategies tailored to your needs. No prerequisite knowledge is required, just an open mind and willingness to step occasionally outside of your comfort zone. Each chapter builds upon the last, introducing techniques that gradually expand your communication repertoire. The exercises aren't merely theoretical. They're designed for immediate application in your daily interactions. Growth happens in the space between knowledge and action, which is why implementation is emphasized throughout. I'm profoundly grateful that you've chosen this audiobook from among countless others. Your decision reflects a commitment to personal growth that already sets you apart. As we move forward, remember that discomfort is often a precursor to breakthrough. Embrace the challenges, celebrate small wins, and trust the process. The journey toward becoming a confident, engaging communicator begins with a single conversation. Let's start that conversation now. Master the conversations that create real connection. Have you ever left a conversation wishing you had said more, or that your words had landed the way you intended? I know that feeling well. Early in my career, I often walked away from discussions frustrated, replaying every sentence in my head and wondering what I could have done differently. Communication is one of the most powerful skills we can develop. Yet most of us were never really taught how to do it effectively. The truth is, being a great communicator is not about charm or charisma. It is about understanding the invisible dynamics that shape every interaction, the way your emotions, confidence, and mindset influence how others receive you. Once you become aware of these patterns, conversation stops feeling like performance and starts becoming a connection. To help you understand your unique communication style on a deeper level, I have collaborated with Books for Growth to bring you the free "What is Your Psychological Archetype?" quiz. It is a short yet powerful self-discovery tool that reveals the mental and emotional patterns shaping how you connect with others. The insights you gain can help you overcome hesitation, speak more confidently, and build authentic connections with ease. Every meaningful relationship, opportunity, and breakthrough begins with a single conversation. Start mastering the way you connect. Take the quiz now at quiz.books4growth.com to get started. That's quiz.books4growth.com. Again, quiz.books4growth.com. Chapter 1. The Myth of the Natural-Born Talker. The great communication myth that's holding you back. The silent looks across the conference table. The awkward pauses at networking events. The blank stares when you're trying to express an important idea. If you've ever found yourself wishing you could communicate with the apparent ease of others, you're far from alone. We've all encountered those people who seem to float effortlessly through social interactions. The colleague who wins over rooms with a few well-chosen words. The friend who never struggles to express exactly what they mean. The family member who always knows the right thing to say. For decades, we've labeled these individuals as natural communicators, blessed with an innate gift that the rest of us simply lack. This ability that effective communicators are born, not made, has persisted despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It's a comforting myth to those who struggle with communication, providing a convenient excuse to avoid the discomfort of growth. After all, if communication skills are innate, why bother trying to improve? Yet this assumption has silently sabotaged countless careers, relationships, and opportunities. The truth is that communication excellence is acquired, not inherited. The most engaging speakers, the most persuasive negotiators, And the most empathetic listeners have all developed their abilities through deliberate practice and learned techniques. When we examine the biographies of history's most renowned communicators, we discover not natural talent, but persistent effort. Winston Churchill, whose speeches rallied a nation during its darkest hours, struggled with a speech impediment in his youth. Warren Buffett, whose clear explanations of complex financial concepts have made him a legend, once feared public speaking so intensely that he enrolled in a Dale Carnegie course to overcome it. These figures didn't succeed despite their challenges. They succeeded because overcoming those challenges forced them to master communication fundamentals that naturally gifted speakers might overlook. The myth of the natural-born communicator doesn't just discourage improvement. It fundamentally misunderstands how communication works. Effective communication isn't a singular talent, but rather a constellation of learnable skills. Active listening, emotional intelligence, clear articulation, narrative structure, body language awareness, and situational adaptability. Each of these components can be studied, practiced, and refined. What appears as natural fluency is actually the culmination of hundreds of small skills working in concert, much like how a seemingly effortless athletic performance disguises years of training and technique development. Throughout this audiobook, we'll explore concrete strategies for developing these skills regardless of your starting points. Whether you consider yourself painfully shy or merely looking to refine already solid abilities, the techniques we'll cover are designed to elevate your communication to new heights. We'll examine approaches for conquering conversation anxiety, methods for creating instant rapport, frameworks for structuring compelling messages, and tactics for reading subtle social cues. Each chapter builds upon the last to create a comprehensive communication toolkit applicable across context, from high-stakes business negotiations to casual social gatherings. In this first chapter, we'll begin by dismantling the myth of the natural-born communicator and establishing a more empowering perspective. We'll explore the psychology behind communication anxiety and why so many capable people underestimate their potential for growth. Then we'll introduce a framework for identifying your personal communication challenges, establishing realistic improvement goals, and creating a tailored practice regimen. By the chapter's end, you'll understand that your communication struggles aren't evidence of an immutable personality flaw, but rather opportunities for transformative growth. The journey toward communication mastery begins with a simple but profound shift in mindset, recognizing that exceptional communicators are made, not born. This perspective doesn't deny that temperaments differ. Some people may indeed find social interactions energizing, while others find them draining. But it acknowledges that, regardless of disposition, anyone can learn to communicate effectively. The strategies and techniques in this audiobook have been tested across personality types, cultural backgrounds, and experience levels. They work not because they transform you into someone else, but because they help you become the most effective communicator your authentic self can be. As we proceed, remember that communication mastery isn't about achieving perfection in every interaction, but about consistent improvement over time. The small changes you implement today will compound into remarkable results. Stronger relationships, new opportunities, increased confidence, and a more authentic expression of your ideas and values. Whether you're speaking to an audience of thousands or having coffee with a friend, the principles remain the same. Effective communication is learnable, and with the right approach, you can transform how you connect with the world around you. The Quiet Man's Speech. Thomas Mitchell sat at his desk in the corner of the open plan office, sweat beading on his forehead. The weekly sales meeting loomed 20 minutes away. His heart pounded against his ribs like a prisoner demanding release. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in the same unflattering glow. "Mitchell, you ready for your presentation?" Jackson called from across the room. Thomas nodded, though the lies stuck to his throat like dry bread. He hadn't always been this way. As a child, he spoke with the carefree abandon that came with innocence. But somewhere between adolescence and adulthood, the words began to tangle themselves before they could reach his lips. The dog-eared copy of How to Talk to Anyone sat half-hidden under a stack of reports. Thomas had purchased it 3 weeks ago, after the disaster at the Bainbridge account meeting where he froze mid-sentence. The spine showed the wear of constant reading, the pages marked with yellow sticky notes. Small steps, the author had promised. Techniques anyone can learn. Thomas wanted to believe it. He remembered his father's booming voice, how easily conversation flowed from him at neighborhood barbecues and family gatherings. "Some people just have it," his mother used to say, as if good communication was a genetic inheritance, like blue eyes or a cleft chin. Thomas sipped his cold coffee and grimaced at both the taste and the memory. The office buzzed with pre-meeting energy. Alice from marketing laughed with the ease of someone who never questioned her right to take up space in a conversation. Thomas studied her from behind his computer monitor. Her hands moved in rhythm with her words, her face animated. Nothing rehearsed, nothing forced. He had tried mimicking such naturalness in front of his bathroom mirror, but the results always looked like poor theater. 5 minutes, everyone," Jackson announced. Thomas gathered his notes and the presentation slides he had practiced until 2 a.m. The book had advised him to prepare thoroughly, but not to memorize. "Know your material, not your script," it said. The concept terrified and liberated him in equal measure. He straightened his tie and thought about the technique he'd been practicing. The 2-second eye contact, the deliberate lowering of pitch at the end of statements, the strategic pauses. The conference room windows looked out onto the city, glass and steel stretching toward a cloud-streaked sky. Thomas took his seat, arranging his materials with precise movements. The room filled with colleagues, their chatter a symphony of confident voices. He focused on his breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. The book rested in his briefcase like a talisman. Jackson opened the meeting with his usual energy, calling on each team member for updates. The moment approached like an incoming tide. Thomas reviewed the first technique in his mind. Start strong. Make a statement that commands attention. His palms dampened the edges of his notes. When Jackson called his name, Thomas stood, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo for too long. "The Bainbridge account," Thomas began, his voice steadier than he expected, "represents our largest opportunity this quarter." The words came out clearly, and he remembered to lower his pitch at the end. He made eye contact with 3 people around the table, holding each gaze for the practiced 2 seconds. No one looked away uncomfortably. No one smirked. They were listening, actually listening to what he had to say. In that moment, something shifted in Thomas's understanding. The techniques weren't magic. They were tools. And tools could be learned, mastered. The knot in his stomach began to loosen. The words came more naturally now, flowing not with the inherited ease of his father's gift, but with the earned confidence of practice. His hand gestures, while not as fluid as Alice's, emphasized his points without seeming rehearsed. The sunlight shifted through the windows, warming the side of Thomas's face as he moved to the next slide. He caught a glimpse of Jackson nodding, Alice making notes. They weren't seeing a man struggling to speak. They were seeing a professional delivering information. The distinction hit Thomas with startling clarity. Perhaps the division between natural communicators and everyone else wasn't as rigid as he'd believed. Perhaps it was more like a muscle that strengthened with use. As Thomas finished his presentation, a question hung in the air, unspoken but persistent. If communication was indeed a skill that could be developed rather than an innate talent, what other aspects of his life had he dismissed as beyond his reach, simply because they didn't come naturally to him? The widespread illusion. Great communicators are born, not made. Most people believe exceptional communicators emerge from the womb with silver tongues. They watch individuals command attention effortlessly at parties, meetings, or on stage and conclude, they just have a natural gift. This deeply entrenched belief creates an artificial divide between those supposedly blessed with communication prowess and everyone else. It's a convenient explanation that absolves us from putting in the work to improve. Think of communication skills like playing a musical instrument. When we see a pianist perform a flawless concerto, we witness the results of thousands of hours of practice, not innate talent alone. The virtuoso didn't emerge from childhood playing Chopin perfectly. They started with simple scales, made countless mistakes, received feedback, and gradually improved through deliberate practice. Communication follows this same pattern. Visible excellence masks the invisible practice. Research consistently contradicts this natural talent myth. Studies in behavioral psychology demonstrate that social skills, including communication abilities, develop primarily through environmental factors and deliberate practice rather than genetic predisposition. Dr. Angela Duckworth's research on grit shows that persistent effort towards skill development proves far more predictive of success than innate ability. Even individuals considered communication naturals have typically accumulated extensive practice hours through family dynamics, educational experiences, and social environments that fostered these abilities. The naturally gifted communicator misconception becomes particularly harmful when it prevents people from attempting improvement. When we categorize ourselves as just not good at talking to people, we establish a self-fulfilling prophecy. This fixed mindset creates artificial limitations. Many accomplished public speakers, negotiators, and conversationalists once struggled with severe communication anxiety. Their transformation came not from discovering hidden natural talent, but from consistent, focused practice and the application of specific techniques. Communication excellence is not a genetic inheritance, but a cultivated skill that anyone can develop with the right approach and persistent practice. Beyond the myth, building real communication skills. The journey toward becoming an effective communicator begins with awareness. Pay attention to how you currently communicate, your speaking pace, voice modulation, listening habits, and body language. Recording yourself during conversations or presentations provides valuable insight into habits you might not notice. This self-awareness establishes your starting point and identifies specific areas for improvement. Active listening forms the foundation of meaningful communication. Most people listen merely to respond rather than to understand. Practice giving your complete attention to speakers without interrupting or formulating responses while they talk. Maintain eye contact, nod occasionally, and ask clarifying questions that demonstrate engagement. This simple technique immediately distinguishes you as someone who values others' perspectives. Consider the difference between a neglected garden and one tended daily with care. Both gardens contain the same potential, but only the nurtured one flourishes with vibrant flowers and abundant produce. Your communication skills respond similarly to consistent attention and development. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to practice, refine, and grow your abilities. Vocabulary expansion significantly enhances expression capabilities. Begin by learning just one new word daily and incorporating it naturally into conversations. Over a year, that's 365 new ways to express yourself. Read widely across genres, listen to articulate speakers, and actively practice using new terminology. This gradual expansion creates more precise and engaging communication without sounding pretentious. Body language conveys more information than words alone. Practice maintaining comfortable eye contact, neither staring intensely nor constantly looking away. Position your body toward conversation partners. Maintain an open posture, uncrossed arms, and mirror subtle aspects of their body language to establish rapport. These nonverbal cues signal respect and interest that words alone cannot convey. Storytelling transforms ordinary information into compelling messages. Humans naturally connect with narrative structures. Practice crafting personal experiences into concise stories with clear beginnings, meaningful complications, and satisfying resolutions. Even complex data becomes more memorable and persuasive when framed within relevant stories that listeners can relate to emotionally. The conversational feedback loop remains essential for improvement. Seek honest input from trusted friends, colleagues, or communication coaches about your strengths and weaknesses. Record presentations and conversations with permission to review later. Join organizations like Toastmasters that provide structured feedback opportunities. Without this external perspective, we often remain blind to our most significant communication barriers. Emotion management distinguishes skilled communicators from average ones. Practice maintaining composure during difficult conversations by recognizing emotional triggers before they overwhelm you. Deep breathing techniques, brief mental pauses, and reframing challenging situations as learning opportunities help maintain clarity when emotions threaten to derail productive communication. Adaptability to different audiences demonstrates true communication mastery. Practice adjusting your language, examples, and delivery based on who you're speaking with. The technical details appropriate for colleagues might confuse family members, while the casual approach perfect for friends might appear unprofessional in business settings. This contextual awareness doesn't reflect insincerity, but rather respect for diverse communication needs. What if the difference between where you are now and becoming a compelling communicator isn't some missing natural gift, but simply the consistent application of learnable techniques? Personalizing your communication growth plan. Everyone faces unique communication challenges. Some struggle with anxiety before speaking to groups. Others ramble without reaching clear points. And many find it difficult to express disagreement constructively. Honest self-assessment provides the foundation for meaningful improvement. Take time to reflect on patterns in your conversations. When do you feel most confident or uncomfortable? Which situations consistently produce unsatisfying outcomes? Recording yourself during conversations, with permission, often reveals surprising insights. Most people discover habitual phrases, tone patterns, or nonverbal behaviors they never realized were prominent in their communication style. This objective feedback, though sometimes uncomfortable to review, offers specific improvement targets rather than vague goals like Become a better communicator. External feedback provides an equally valuable perspective. Our self-perception often differs dramatically from how others experience our communication. Select trustworthy individuals who will provide honest, constructive observations about your strengths and growth opportunities. Specific questions yield more useful feedback than general inquiries. Ask about particular behaviors rather than overall impressions. Progress in communication skills requires structured practice beyond everyday conversations. Create deliberate opportunities to develop specific abilities, whether joining public speaking organizations, practicing difficult conversations with a friend before having them for real, or recording yourself answering anticipated questions before important meetings. This intentional practice accelerates improvement far beyond what passive experience provides. The Clear Communication Development Framework. The CLEAR framework offers a systematic approach to communication skill enhancement, providing structure to what often feels like an overwhelming improvement process. Component 1. Candid Assessment. Begin by conducting a comprehensive self-evaluation of your current communication patterns. Document specific scenarios where you feel your communication succeeds or falls short. Use journaling to record observations about interactions immediately afterward, noting emotional responses, outcomes, and specific techniques used. Supplement self-assessment with feedback from trusted sources who observe you in various contexts. This establishes your baseline and identifies priority improvement areas. Assessment should examine specific communication dimensions rather than general impressions. Evaluate clarity, how easily others understand your main points, engagement, how well you maintain attention, listening skills, how thoroughly you understand others before responding, emotional management, how effectively you handle difficult conversations, and adaptability, how well you adjust to different audiences. Component 2. Logical Goal Setting. Transform assessment insight into SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Rather than vague aspirations like become more confident speaking, create concrete objectives such as maintain eye contact with audience members 80% of the time during my next 3 presentations, or reduce filler words, like, by 50% in client meetings by month end. Effective communication goals balance ambition with achievability. Overly modest goals produce minimal growth, while unrealistic targets generate frustration. Create a progression of increasingly challenging objectives that build upon each other, celebrating small victories while maintaining focus on longer-term development. Component 3. Engaged Practice. Implement deliberate practice routines targeting specific communication elements. This differs fundamentally from simply participating in more conversations. Deliberate practice involves focused attention on particular skills, immediate feedback, reflection, and refinement through repetition. Create practice opportunities aligned with your goals. For improving presentation skills, record yourself delivering content multiple times, refining between attempts. For enhancing listening abilities, participate in conversations where you summarize the speaker's points before responding. For developing questioning techniques, prepare thoughtful inquiries before meetings and evaluate their effectiveness afterward. Component 4. Active feedback integration. Establish consistent feedback mechanisms from diverse sources. Peer feedback provides perspective on collegial interactions. while mentor feedback offers experienced guidance. Recording yourself enables self-critique, while structured evaluation through organizations like Toastmasters provides a systematic assessment. Transform feedback into actionable improvements rather than general impressions. When receiving comments that you speak too quickly, translate this into specific adjustments, inserting deliberate pauses between key points, practicing with a metronome, or marking presentation notes with pause reminders. Each feedback point should generate a concrete modification to your practice routine. Component 5. Regular reassessment. Complete the framework cycle through consistent progress evaluation against established goals. Schedule regular reviews, weekly, monthly, quarterly, to measure improvement, refine objectives, and celebrate progress. This prevents the common pattern of initial enthusiasm followed by abandoned practice when results aren't immediately apparent. Reassessment should maintain objective measures established during your initial assessment. If you initially counted filler words, continue this measurement to track reduction. If you assessed eye contact duration, measure changes using the same methodology. This consistency provides reliable progress indicators that maintain motivation through inevitable plateaus. The components of the clear framework interact dynamically rather than linearly. Assessment informs goal setting, which directs practice, which generates feedback, which triggers reassessment, which refines goals, creating a continuous improvement cycle. This systematic approach transforms vague communication aspirations into measurable progress through consistent, focused effort. Consider how specific communication challenges respond differently to this framework. Overcoming public speaking anxiety might require more emphasis on gradual exposure through practice, while developing executive presence might demand greater focus on feedback from leadership mentors. The framework's flexibility accommodates diverse communication development needs while maintaining structural consistency. By understanding the myth of natural talent, implementing specific improvement techniques, and following a structured development framework, anyone can transform their communication abilities regardless of their starting point. The journey requires patience and persistence, but the results? Deeper connections, greater influence, and enhanced opportunities make this one of the most valuable skill investments possible. Breaking through the conversation barrier. The journey to becoming a skilled communicator doesn't start with natural talent. It begins with commitment. Throughout this chapter, we've dismantled the persistent myth that great communicators simply emerge from the womb with an innate gift for gab. This falsehood has held too many people back for too long, convincing them that their communication struggles are somehow hardwired and permanent. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every person you've admired for their conversational abilities, whether a charismatic leader, engaging presenter, or that friend who effortlessly connects with strangers, has developed these skills through practice, awareness, and deliberate technique. Their perceived natural ability is actually the product of countless interactions, failures, and adjustments made over time. By recognizing that communication skills exist on a spectrum that can be improved rather than as fixed traits, you've already taken the first crucial step toward transformation. The techniques we've explored, from active listening and body language awareness to structured conversation formats, provide a concrete foundation upon which to build your unique communication style. Your personal assessment of strengths and challenges now serves as a roadmap. highlighting exactly where focused practice will yield the greatest improvements. Remember that meaningful growth happens at the edge of comfort, not in its center. The strategic practice plan you've created will guide your daily efforts toward noticeable improvement. Think about this. Every master communicator was once a beginner. Every smooth conversation they now navigate was preceded by hundreds of awkward exchanges. The difference between those who develop exceptional communication skills and those who don't isn't the starting point. It's persistence. As we move forward in the coming chapters, we'll build upon this foundation with increasingly sophisticated techniques and strategies. You'll learn how to navigate difficult conversations with confidence, build instant rapport with strangers, and communicate authentically in any setting. The transformation ahead might seem daunting now, but each small improvement compounds. Within weeks, you'll notice subtle shifts in how people respond to you. Within months, you'll find yourself initiating conversations you would have previously avoided. And within a year, others might even begin asking you for communication advice, wondering if perhaps you were born with it. You'll smile, knowing better. Your journey to becoming someone who can truly talk to anyone has only just begun. The social connections, professional opportunities, and personal relationships waiting on the other side of improved communication skills are worth every moment of practice. By embracing the learnable nature of effective communication, you've unlocked a potential for growth that many never discover. The question is no longer whether you can become a great communicator. It's how great you're willing to become. Build confidence from within and speak with authentic calm. When I first began studying communication, I believed success depended entirely on technique. The right phrasing, the right timing, the right body language. But I eventually learned that no strategy works if you are running on empty inside. True connection begins with how you care for yourself. If you have ever felt tense before a conversation or found yourself replaying awkward moments long after they were over, you already understand how much emotional balance matters. When you are centered, your words flow naturally. When you are exhausted or anxious, even simple exchanges can feel like uphill battles. I have been there, and I know how draining that can be. Real confidence does not come from perfection. It comes from presence, from the ability to show up calm, steady, and grounded, no matter who you are speaking with. That inner steadiness is what turns conversations from forced to effortless. To help you strengthen that foundation, I collaborated with Books for Growth to create a free ebook titled Empowerment Through Self-Care. It's a practical guide designed to help you build emotional resilience, restore your energy, and develop daily habits that keep your mind clear and your communication authentic. The most powerful way to connect with others begins with how you connect with yourself. When you nurture calm and clarity within, every conversation becomes easier, every interaction more genuine, and every connection more meaningful. Download your free copy today at selfcare.booksforgrowth.com to get started. That's selfcare.books4growth.com. Again, selfcare.booksforgrowth.com.
I hope you are enjoying my audiobook so far. It would be a pleasure if you could let me know how you are feeling about this audiobook in the comments section below. We would greatly appreciate it if you could also like this video and subscribe to United Audiobooks to have access to more best-selling audiobooks in the future. Also, if you are interested in getting more free audiobooks, please click the first link in the description below. Now let us carry on with the next chapter.
Chapter 2: The Power of Listening, More Than Just Hearing. The silent side of every powerful conversation. When we think about effective communication, our minds typically jump to what we say and how we say it. Yet, perhaps the most critical element of meaningful exchange happens when our lips are still. The art of listening. In our rush to articulate thoughts, craft clever responses, or simply wait for our turn to speak, we often overlook that communication is fundamentally a two-way street. Genuine connection occurs not in the moment we fill with our own voice, but in the spaces we create to genuinely absorb what others share with us. The irony is palpable. Many of us invest considerable time refining our speech, expanding our vocabulary, and polishing our delivery, while neglecting the complementary skill that makes all conversation worthwhile. Active listening transcends the basic biological function of hearing. It represents a conscious decision to be fully present with another person. This presence communicates something profound. You matter. Your thoughts have value. I am here with you in this moment. No eloquent speech can replace the connection established when someone feels truly heard and understood. What separates passive hearing from active listening? Hearing captures sound waves. Listening captures meaning, nuance, and emotion. When someone speaks to you, they're rarely just transmitting information. They're expressing needs, revealing values, and sometimes communicating what they themselves don't fully understand. The skilled listener detects these subtleties, reading between the lines to grasp what remains unsaid. This deeper understanding forms the foundation for authentic connection, whether in personal relationships, professional settings, or casual encounters with strangers. Consider how often communication breakdowns occur, not because of what was said, but because of what was misunderstood or never truly heard. Relationships falter when partners feel unheard. Business initiatives fail when leadership doesn't listen to team concerns. Negotiations stall when neither party seeks to understand the other's true interest. These scenarios illustrate how listening isn't merely a courtesy. It's a critical competency that determines the success of virtually every human interaction. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore 3 essential dimensions of listening mastery. First, we'll examine how active listening differs from passive hearing, and why this distinction matters in every conversation you have. You'll discover concrete techniques to demonstrate engagement that goes beyond nodding and maintaining eye contact. Second, we'll delve into the emotional intelligence required to detect what lies beneath the surface of others' words, their unspoken fears, desires, and intentions. Understanding these undercurrents will transform how you respond to others, creating space for deeper connection. Finally, we'll explore practical strategies to enhance your listening capacity, even in challenging circumstances. These approaches aren't theoretical abstractions, but actionable methods you can implement immediately to strengthen relationships, resolve conflicts more effectively, and build genuine rapport with anyone you encounter. The techniques we'll cover work equally well whether you're connecting with a romantic partner, collaborating with colleagues, or navigating a difficult conversation with someone whose perspective differs dramatically from your own. This journey into listening excellence requires honesty about our tendencies. Many of us consider ourselves good listeners already, yet research consistently shows that most people overestimate their listening skills. The path to improvement begins with recognizing that listening, like speaking, requires deliberate practice and conscious development. As you progress through this chapter, I invite you to approach these concepts with openness, willing to examine your current habits and embrace new approaches that might initially feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. The rewards of becoming an exceptional listener extend far beyond improved communication. When you truly listen, you gain access to insights and perspectives that enrich your understanding of both others and yourself. You build trust that opens doors to deeper relationships and new opportunities. Perhaps most importantly, you offer others the rare gift of being fully seen and heard, a fundamental human need in our increasingly distracted world. Let's begin this exploration of listening's transformative power and discover how silence, properly employed, can speak more eloquently than any words. The silence between words. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, creating horizontal stripes across Mark's desk. He tapped his pen against the notepad, watching the shadow stretch across the room. The meeting had gone poorly. He knew it. His team knew it. And worse, the client had made it painfully clear. "You talked too much," Sarah had told him afterward, leaning against his office doorframe. "You didn't let them get a word in." Her words stung because they rang true. Mark had filled every silence with more information, more assurances, more promises. The client had nodded politely, eyes glazing over, until finally interrupting to say they needed more time to consider their options. Mark swiveled in his chair and looked out the window at the city skyline. Buildings pierced the clouds like stone fingers reaching for something unattainable. He had always prided himself on his communication skills. In college, he'd excelled in the debate club. At work, he delivered presentations that earned him promotions. But lately, something felt off. His words didn't land with the same impact. People seemed to drift away during conversations. "The art of listening," he muttered, remembering the book his sister had given him for his birthday. He'd skimmed it, appreciating the theory but failing to apply it. The book sat on his shelf now, its spine unbroken, its wisdom untapped. Mark thought about the client meeting again, replaying it in his mind. He remembered talking about metrics and projections, but what had the client actually said? What concerns had they voiced that he might have missed while formulating his next point? His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Dinner tonight? We need to talk about the Henderson account." Mark texted back his agreement and set the phone down. The Henderson account was another problem altogether. The client complained that their concerns weren't being addressed. Mark had sent them pages of documentation, hours of video tutorials, and lengthy emails explaining their services. Yet somehow, none of it had helped. The traffic outside his window slowed to a crawl as the evening commute began. Horns blared in a discordant symphony of frustration. Mark watched a pigeon land on his windowsill, its head cocking to one side as if listening for something. The bird stayed perfectly still, absorbing the world around it before taking flight again. Maybe that's it, Mark thought. He had been so focused on perfecting his message that he'd forgotten the other half of communication. When had he last truly listened to a client without mentally preparing his response? When had he last observed body language, noted hesitations, or picked up on the emotions behind the words? He recalled a passage from the book. True understanding comes not from hearing words, but from comprehending the intentions and feelings that give those words meaning. Mark stood up and grabbed his jacket. The Henderson file lay open on his desk, filled with his notes and strategies. He closed it deliberately and slipped it into his briefcase. Tonight, he would try something different with Sarah. He would listen. Really listen. Not to respond, not to fix, not to impress, just to understand. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, As Mark stepped inside, he wondered, if words could bridge the gap between people, could silence, filled with nothing but attention and understanding, build an even stronger connection? The unsung hero of communication. When we think of communication, speaking typically takes center stage. We focus on word choice, clarity, and delivery. But communication is a two-way street, and listening is the crucial other half. Active listening goes far beyond simply hearing words. It involves full engagement with the speaker, processing their message, and responding thoughtfully. Picture a radio antenna. When properly positioned, it captures clear signals and produces crisp sound. When misaligned, static interferes with reception. Our listening abilities work similarly. When we truly listen, focusing completely on the speaker without planning our response or getting distracted, we receive clear, undistorted messages. When we merely hear without listening, vital information gets lost in the static of our own thoughts. Research consistently shows that most people remember only about 25 to 50% of what they hear. This shocking statistic reveals that when someone speaks to you for 10 minutes, you're likely missing half the message. Active listening skills can dramatically improve this retention rate, enhancing not just understanding, but the quality of your relationships. The distinction between hearing and listening is profound. Hearing is passive. It's the physical act of sound waves reaching your ears. Listening, particularly active listening, requires intentional effort. It involves interpreting tone, observing body language, and connecting with the emotions underlying the words. This depth of engagement signals respect and builds trust. Many communication breakdowns stem from poor listening rather than poor speaking. Think about your last misunderstanding with a colleague or a loved one. How often was the problem not what was said, but what wasn't properly heard or understood? Active listening prevents these breakdowns by ensuring clarity and demonstrating value for the speaker's perspective. Neurologically, active listening engages multiple brain regions simultaneously. The temporal lobe processes speech sounds, while the frontal lobe analyzes meaning. Meanwhile, the limbic system assesses emotional content. This complex neural activity explains why genuine listening can be mentally taxing and why it's so valuable. Active listening isn't merely a communication skill. It's the foundation upon which meaningful human connections are built. Reading between the lines. Human communication is layered with complexity. Words alone carry only a fraction of our intended message. Research by psychologist Albert Merarian suggests that in conversations with emotional content, only 7% of meaning comes from the actual words spoken. The remaining 93% comes from nonverbal cues, 38% from vocal tone, and 55% from body language. These statistics highlight why detecting emotions behind words is crucial. When someone says, "I'm fine," their tone, facial expression, and posture tells the real story. A clipped "fine" with crossed arms signals something very different from a relaxed "fine" with an easy smile. Developing sensitivity to these nuances transforms surface conversations into meaningful exchanges. Imagine walking through an art gallery. A casual observer might glance at paintings and move on, seeing only colors and shapes. But an experienced art critic perceives subtle techniques, historical influences, and the emotions the artist sought to convey. Listening with emotional intelligence is similar. You're not just hearing words, but perceiving the rich tapestry of meaning behind them. Detecting emotions requires presence. When your mind wanders to what you'll say next or tonight's dinner plans, you miss critical emotional cues. Authentic listening happens in the present moment. with your full attention dedicated to understanding not just what someone is saying, but what they're truly communicating. The skill of detecting intentions develops with practice. People rarely state their needs directly. They hint, imply, or speak around their true concerns. A colleague saying, "This project has a tight deadline," might actually be requesting help or expressing anxiety about the workload. A friend commenting, "I haven't seen that new restaurant," might be indirectly suggesting you go together. Recognizing these subtle invitations enriches your relationships. Cultural and personal contexts significantly influence how people express emotions and intentions. Some cultures value direct communication, while others rely heavily on context and implication. Similarly, individuals have unique communication patterns shaped by their upbringing, personality, and experiences. Effective listeners adjust their interpretation based on who is speaking. Trust your intuition when reading between the lines. Your brain processes countless subtle cues, micro-expressions, voice modulations, word choice patterns that you might not consciously register. That feeling that something seems off often stems from your mind detecting inconsistencies between spoken words and emotional truth. Clarifying questions serve as powerful tools for confirming emotional understanding. "You seem concerned about this decision. Is that right?" Or, "I'm sensing you're excited but also nervous about this opportunity." Create space for the speaker to confirm or clarify their feelings, preventing misinterpretation. Developing this emotional perception requires self-awareness. Our own emotional states create filters through which we interpret others' communications. When we're stressed, we might perceive neutral comments as critical. When we're insecure, we might interpret genuine questions as challenges. Recognizing these filters helps us set them aside to perceive others more accurately. What might transform in your relationships if you began listening, not just for what people say, but for what they truly mean? Practical strategies for deeper connections. Improving listening skills doesn't happen overnight. Like any valuable skill, it requires deliberate practice and consistent application. The good news is that even small adjustments can significantly enhance your connections with others. Start by eliminating distractions. Put your phone away, not just face down, but out of sight entirely. Close your laptop. Turn away from your computer screen. These physical adjustments signal to both your brain and the speaker that this conversation deserves your full attention. Research shows that even the visible presence of a phone reduces perceived connection quality in conversations. The physical aspect of listening matters tremendously. Maintain appropriate eye contact, not staring, but attentive focus. Lean slightly forward to indicate interest, not occasionally to show understanding. These nonverbal cues not only demonstrate your engagement, but also help maintain your own attention on the conversation. Think of your attention as a spotlight on a stage. Where you direct it determines what comes into clear focus and what remains in shadow. When someone speaks to you, consciously shine that spotlight on them, their words, expressions, and meaning, rather than on your own thoughts or distractions waiting in the wings. Practice patience with silence. Many people rush to fill conversational pauses out of discomfort, but these moments often allow speakers to gather thoughts or find the right words for complex feelings. Embracing these brief silences communicates respect for the speaker's process and can help lead to deeper sharing than might otherwise occur. The AAIRF Active Listening Model. The active listening model provides a comprehensive framework for developing exceptional listening skills. This model consists of 5 interconnected components that, when practiced together, transform ordinary conversations into meaningful exchanges. Let's explore each component in detail. Attention. Attention forms the foundation of active listening. Without it, all other components fail. Giving your complete attention means eliminating both external and internal distractions. External distractions include obvious interruptions like phones, notifications, and environmental noise. Internal distractions, often more challenging to control, include planning your response while the other person speaks, judging what they're saying, or letting your mind wander to unrelated thoughts. Practicing attention involves both physical and mental discipline. Physically, position yourself to focus, face the speaker, maintain appropriate eye contact, and adopt an open posture. Mentally, repeatedly bring your focus back to the speaker whenever your mind begins to drift. This resembles meditation practice, where you gently redirect attention without self-criticism when it wanders. The attention component directly impacts how much information you retain from conversations. When attention wavers, critical details and emotional nuances slip past unnoticed. When attention remains steady, your comprehension and recall dramatically improve, building the foundation for a deeper connection. Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement provides essential feedback to the speaker that you're engaged and processing their message. This component involves both verbal and nonverbal cues that encourage continued sharing, nodding, maintaining appropriate facial expressions, and using brief verbal affirmations. I see. Yes. All signal that you're present and receptive. Effective acknowledgement matches the speaker's emotional tone. When someone shares something exciting, your acknowledgements might be more animated. When they share something serious or sad, your responses should reflect appropriate solemnity. This emotional attunement demonstrates not just attention, but empathy. Without acknowledgement, speakers often feel uncertain whether their message is being received. This uncertainty can lead them to repeat points, speak more rapidly, or cut their sharing short. Regular acknowledgement creates a psychological safety net that allows for more natural, flowing conversation. Interpretation. Interpretation involves processing what you've heard to extract meaning beyond the literal words. This component requires engaging with both the content and the context of communication. What is the speaker's tone suggesting? What might their body language reveal? How does this message fit with what you already know about them and the situation? Critical to interpretation is suspending judgment. When we quickly categorize what someone says as right, wrong, smart, or foolish, we stop truly interpreting and start filtering through our own biases. Effective interpretation maintains curiosity about the speaker's perspective, even when it differs from our own. The interpretation phase often benefits from internal paraphrasing, mentally restating what you've heard to ensure understanding. This practice helps integrate new information with existing knowledge and prepares you for the next components of the model. Response. Response is your thoughtful contribution after processing what you've heard. This differs dramatically from merely reacting or waiting for your turn to speak. A quality response demonstrates that you've considered the speaker's message and are adding value to the conversation. Effective responses often begin with reflective statements that confirm understanding. It sounds like you're saying, or I'm understanding that you feel. These provide the speaker with an opportunity to clarify if needed. Following this reflection, your response might offer perspective, ask a clarifying question, or share relevant experience, always in service of deepening the conversation rather than shifting attention to yourself. The response component requires balancing several elements: honesty about your perspective, respect for the speaker's position, and contribution toward the conversation's purpose. This balance shifts depending on context, whether you're in a personal conversation, a professional discussion, or a problem-solving scenario. Feedback loop. The feedback loop completes and sustains the active listening process. Rather than a linear progression that ends with your response, effective communication continues with ongoing verification of understanding. This might include explicitly checking your interpretation. Did I understand correctly that? Inviting elaboration. Could you tell me more about? Or noticing the speaker's reaction to your response. This component prevents the common problem of conversations that drift into parallel monologues. The feedback loop maintains connection by continuously confirming, shared understanding, and adjusting as needed. It transforms listening from a passive activity into an active, collaborative process. The cyclical nature of this model means that after the feedback loop, you return to the focused attention as the conversation continues. Each cycle deepens understanding and strengthens connection, making communication progressively more effective. When we master all 5 components of active listening, attention, acknowledgement, interpretation, response, and feedback, we transform not just how we hear others, but how deeply we connect with them, creating the foundation for meaningful relationships in every area of life. The overlooked foundation of meaningful connection. When someone truly listens to us, we feel valued in a way few other human interactions can provide. Throughout this chapter, we've explored how genuine listening transcends the passive act of hearing words and transforms into an active, engaged process that forms the cornerstone of meaningful communication. The skills we've examined aren't merely nice-to-have social graces. They're essential tools for navigating our increasingly complex world of human relationships. Active listening creates a foundation of trust that no amount of eloquent speaking can establish on its own. When we demonstrate that we've not only heard someone's words, but truly grasped their underlying emotions and intentions, we've built bridges of understanding that can withstand the weight of disagreement and conflict. Many of us spend years perfecting our speaking abilities while neglecting the other half of the communication equation. Yet, as we've discovered, even the most articulate speaker will struggle to connect meaningfully without developing complementary listening skills. The strategies we've explored, from maintaining eye contact and eliminating distractions to asking thoughtful follow-up questions, create space for genuine understanding to flourish. Remember that effective listening is an active choice we make moment by moment. It requires setting aside our internal dialogue, suspending judgment, and resisting the temptation to formulate our response while the other person is still speaking. This conscious decision to be fully present pays dividends in both personal and professional spheres. As you move forward from this chapter, challenge yourself to approach each conversation as an opportunity to deepen your listening practice. Notice how people respond when they feel truly heard and understood. Pay attention to the subtle shifts in your relationships as you implement these techniques consistently. The beauty of enhanced listening skills lies in their immediate applicability. You don't need special circumstances or formal settings to practice. Every interaction offers a fresh chance to engage more deeply. Whether navigating a difficult conversation with a colleague, supporting a friend through hardship, or simply connecting with a stranger, your improved ability to listen will serve as an invisible thread strengthening the fabric of your social connections. In our next chapter, we'll build upon this foundation by exploring how to articulate your own thoughts effectively, creating a balanced approach to communication that both expresses and receives with equal skill. But remember, the speaking techniques we'll cover can only reach their full potential when paired with listening skills you've now begun to master. The reciprocity of connection. Before we move into the next chapter on feedback, I want you to take a moment to notice something subtle, something that often goes unacknowledged. By this point, you've begun to change not only how you listen, but how others respond to you. When you give someone your full attention, when you resist the urge to interrupt, you communicate something rare: respect. And people feel that. They remember it long after the conversation ends. You've started practicing the kind of listening that creates safety, the space where real communication begins. That skill alone separates you from most people. But growth doesn't happen in isolation. It thrives in exchange. Every meaningful interaction, every honest conversation is part of a larger cycle. You offer presence, and the world returns it in ways you might not expect. This is the quiet law of reciprocity that underlies all authentic connection. If you found value in these first chapters, if something here has helped you navigate a conversation differently, understand someone better, or simply feel more at ease in your own voice, I'd like to invite you to contribute to that cycle of exchange. Take just a moment to leave an honest review of how to talk to anyone. Think of it as your way of keeping the conversation going, of helping another person who's standing where you once stood, uncertain but ready to grow. Your feedback becomes part of the audiobook's living dialogue. It helps others see that communication isn't an inherited gift, but a learnable, empowering skill. More importantly, it reminds future listeners that self-improvement is possible, that even one shift in awareness can transform how we connect. A single sentence from your review might be the encouragement someone else needs to begin. P.S. Just as great communicators learn through exchange, authors grow through reflection. Your words, simple, sincere, and specific, help refine the teaching for those who come next. Thank you for taking part in this reciprocity of connection. Now, let's turn to the next skill that will take your communication to an entirely new level: learning from feedback with confidence and grace. Chapter 3: Feedback, the Constructive Mirror. The hidden key to unlocking your communication potential. Most people flinch when hearing the word feedback. It triggers memories of harsh criticism, embarrassment, or that sinking feeling when someone points out our flaws. Yet, what if feedback wasn't the enemy, but rather our most powerful ally in communication mastery? What if the very thing we avoid could transform our ability to connect with anyone, anywhere? Effective communication isn't innate for most of us. It's cultivated through practice, awareness, and most crucially, through learning from our interactions. The way we process feedback fundamentally shapes our growth as communicators. Those who remain defensive or dismissive of others' responses to their communication style often plateau, while those who embrace feedback as valuable data tend to evolve rapidly. This distinction between seeing feedback as threatening versus viewing it as informative marks the boundary between communication mediocrity and excellence. The ability to engage meaningfully with others hinges not only on what we say, but on how we adjust based on others' responses. Think of the most magnetic conversationalist you know. They likely possess an uncanny awareness of how their words land. This awareness doesn't develop in isolation. It emerges through a willingness to notice, absorb, and adapt to the subtle and explicit feedback constantly flowing in social exchanges. The most skilled communicators aren't necessarily those born with natural charisma, but rather those who've developed a heightened sensitivity to feedback signals and the courage to adjust accordingly. In today's hyper-connected world, where first impressions form in seconds and relationships develop across diverse contexts. The stakes for effective communication have never been higher. The capacity to rapidly calibrate your approach based on feedback isn't just helpful, it's essential. Whether navigating a job interview, building rapport with new neighbors, or deepening existing relationships, your receptivity to feedback directly influences your communication success rate. Many communication guides focus extensively on technique, what to say, how to stand, when to speak. While these elements matter, they overlook a critical truth. Even perfect technique falters without the ability to adapt through feedback. This chapter offers a paradigm shift. Rather than viewing feedback as judgment on your worth or abilities, you'll learn to reframe it as valuable information that illuminates your blind spots and accelerates your growth. We'll explore how to transform from reflexively defending against perceived criticism to curiously exploring what others' reactions can teach you. Throughout this chapter, we'll explore 3 vital dimensions of feedback mastery. First, we'll examine the psychological shift required to move from defensiveness to openness, understanding why we resist feedback and how to rewire these responses. Next, we'll develop concrete skills for soliciting, receiving, and interpreting feedback without taking it personally. Finally, we'll discover practical strategies for implementing feedback effectively to continuously refine your communication approach. By integrating these elements, you'll develop what might be called a feedback intelligence, the capacity to use others' responses as a constructive mirror rather than a threatening judgment. The journey toward becoming someone who can talk to anyone with ease isn't about perfection, it's about progression. And feedback, when properly understood and utilized, becomes your most reliable guide on this path. By embracing rather than avoiding this powerful tool, you'll find yourself connecting more authentically, resolving misunderstandings more effectively, and building relationships more deeply than you previously thought possible. A voice unheard. The clock on the wall ticked away, measuring out the afternoon in steady beats. John sat at his desk, his coffee gone cold beside the stack of presentations he needed to review before tomorrow's meeting. Outside, rain pelted the windows of the 34th floor office, blurring the Chicago skyline into a hazy watercolor. He read Anna's email again. The words burned into his eyes. Your presentation style intimidates the junior staff. They feel unable to contribute when you're leading the discussion. He pushed away from his desk, swiveling to face the rain-streaked window. John had always prided himself on his communication skills. He got results. His team delivered. What did it matter if a few sensitive, new hires felt intimidated? The thought clenched in his chest, hardening into a familiar knot of defensiveness. He recalled last week's product review when Emily, the new UX designer, had tried to interject. What had he done? Cut her off. Moved on. There was a timeline to keep. Got a minute? Julie's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood in his doorway, her expression unreadable. As the department head, she rarely made casual office visits. Sure, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. The leather creaked as she sat down. I've been hearing things, John. Julie placed her hands flat on his desk. Her wedding ring caught the fluorescent light. About your communication style with the team. The knot in his chest tightened. Anna's email, right? Look, I get results. The Ackerman account. This isn't about results. Julie's voice remained level, but her eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable directness. It's about how we get them. Your technical skills are excellent, But if people are afraid to speak up around you, we miss opportunities for innovation. John stared at the rain beyond the glass. A memory surfaced. His first job out of college. The senior developer who had crushed every idea John had offered until he stopped offering them altogether. He had promised himself he would never be that guy. The realization hit him like cold water. "I'm not saying change who you are," Julie continued, her voice softening. "Think of this feedback as a tool, not an attack. You're good, John. You could be exceptional." He thought of Emily again, the way she had shrunk back in her chair after he dismissed her comment. What ideas had died in that moment? What solutions had never surfaced because he needed to be the loudest voice in the room? The office hummed around them, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the soft murmur of collaboration from the open workspace beyond his door. John turned back from the window and faced Julie. "What would you suggest I do differently?" "Start by listening," she said simply. "Really listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak." Outside, the rain began to ease, thin streams of light breaking through the clouds. John nodded slowly, the defensive knot in his chest starting to unravel. He could see now that Anna's email wasn't a judgment of his worth, but a pathway to becoming better than he was. What might change in his team, in himself, if he could learn to hear feedback not as a criticism of who he was, but as an insight into who he could become? The power of reframing criticism. Receiving feedback can feel like a punch to the gut. Most of us instinctively tense up when someone begins a sentence with, "I have some feedback for you." Our hearts race, palms sweat, and defenses rise. This reaction isn't unusual. It's a profoundly human response. Our brains are wired to protect our self-image and social standing, which explains why criticism often triggers our fight or flight response. Think of feedback like a mirror. When you look into a mirror, do you blame it for showing your uncombed hair or the stain on your shirt? Of course not. The mirror simply reflects reality without judgment. Similarly, feedback reflects aspects of our communication that we might not see ourselves. It's not a weapon meant to harm, but a tool designed to help us grow. Research in developmental psychology shows that individuals who adopt a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, progress faster and achieve more than those with a fixed mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck, a Stanford psychologist renowned for her work on mindsets, found that people with growth mindsets welcome feedback as valuable information rather than personal attacks. This perspective transforms criticism from a threat to an opportunity. The journey from dreading feedback to embracing it requires a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of viewing feedback as a judgment of your worth, try seeing it as valuable data. When someone tells you that you interrupt too often during conversations, they're not saying you're a bad person. They're offering information that can help you become more effective. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires deliberate practice and consistent reinforcement. Many of us were raised in educational systems that treated mistakes as failures rather than learning opportunities. This conditioning runs deep. Breaking free requires conscious effort to reframe our relationship with imperfection. Every time you feel that defensive reaction rising, pause and remind yourself, this isn't about who you are. It's about specific behaviors that can be modified. Consider athletes who review game footage with coaches. They don't take it personally when a coach points out a flawed technique or a missed opportunity. They understand that identifying weaknesses is the first step toward improvement. Communication skills deserve the same approach. clinical, objective, and improvement-focused. The beautiful thing about communication skills is their malleability. Unlike fixed traits, they can be shaped and refined throughout our lives. This plasticity means that no matter how awkward or ineffective you may feel now, you possess immense potential for growth. Each piece of feedback offers another opportunity to refine your approach. When we defend against feedback, we rob ourselves of growth opportunities. Every justification, explanation, or counter-argument serves as a barrier between us and improvement. Learning to quiet these defensive responses, to simply listen and absorb, creates space for genuine development. It takes practice and patience, but the rewards are substantial. Think about the most influential communicators you admire. Did they emerge fully formed as masterful speakers and conversationalists? Unlikely. They developed their skills through practice, observation, and, most importantly, by being receptive to feedback. They learned what works and what doesn't by paying attention to how others responded to them. You can follow the same path. The fundamental shift from viewing feedback as criticism to seeing it as valuable information is the foundation upon which all communication improvement is built. Developing a feedback mindset. Seeking feedback proactively, rather than waiting for it to find you, marks the difference between average and exceptional communicators. When you actively request input on your communication style, you demonstrate confidence rather than insecurity. This proactive approach allows you to control the timing, source, and specific areas of feedback, making the experience far less threatening. The ability to ask for feedback is perhaps the most underrated communication skill, says leadership expert Kim Scott, author of Radical Candor. She argues that those who solicit specific feedback regularly outperform their peers not because they're naturally more talented, but because they course correct more frequently. Think about sailing. A boat that adjusts its course every few minutes will reach its destination more efficiently than one that checks direction only occasionally. Receiving feedback effectively requires specific mental preparation. Before someone shares their observations with you, take a deep breath and remind yourself that this information is meant to help you improve. Set your intention to listen fully without interrupting or mentally formulating defenses. This preparation creates a mental space between the stimulus, feedback, and your response, allowing you to choose how to react rather than being driven by instinct. When feedback arrives, listen with your entire being. Make eye contact, nod to show understanding, and resist the urge to speak until the other person is finished. This complete attention accomplishes two things. It ensures you truly hear what's being said rather than what you think is being said. And it shows respect for the person offering feedback, making future exchanges more likely. Words carry tremendous power in feedback exchanges. Phrases like, "That's wrong," or "You don't understand," slams doors shut, while "I see your point," and "Help me understand more," opens windows to deeper understanding. Your vocabulary during feedback conversations directly impacts how much you'll learn from them. Develop a repertoire of phrases that keep the conversation flowing rather than shutting it down. Learning to separate the message from the messenger represents a crucial feedback skill. Sometimes valuable feedback comes wrapped in clumsy delivery. Perhaps the person seems angry, uses absolute language, "you always," or presents their perspective as a universal truth. The skill lies in extracting the useful information without being distracted by the delivery method. Like mining for gold, you must sift through debris to find the valuable nuggets. Not all feedback is created equal. Learning to evaluate feedback quality before incorporating it saves time and prevents unnecessary changes. Consider, does this person have relevant expertise? Have they observed me sufficiently to make this assessment? Does their feedback align with my goals or values? Is there a pattern where multiple people mention the same issue? Triangulating feedback from different sources helps identify truly significant areas for improvement. The psychological concept of emotional regulation plays a central role in feedback processing. This involves managing your emotional responses to maintain cognitive functioning during potentially stressful interactions. Simple techniques like focusing on your breathing, mentally labeling your emotions, "I'm feeling defensive right now," or temporarily distancing yourself from the situation, "How would I advise a friend in this position?" can help maintain emotional equilibrium. Interpreting feedback correctly often requires clarification. Don't hesitate to ask follow-up questions. Could you give me a specific example? Or, what would better communication in that situation look like? These questions transform vague observations into actionable insights. Remember that the person offering feedback may not be skilled at articulating what they observe. Your questions help both of you reach greater clarity. Feedback becomes truly valuable when you translate it into concrete action plans. After receiving input about your communication style, take time to reflect. What specific behaviors can you modify? How will you practice these changes? What success metrics make sense? Creating this bridge between feedback and action ensures that insights don't evaporate, but instead become integrated into your communication approach. How might your relationships and opportunities transform if you could view every piece of feedback as a gift rather than a threat? Implementing feedback strategically. Collecting feedback is only half the journey. Implementing it effectively completes the circle. Many people receive valuable input but fail to translate it into meaningful change. The gap between knowing and doing can be substantial. Bridging this divide requires systematic approaches rather than haphazard efforts. Start by categorizing feedback into 3 buckets: immediately actionable, requiring further development, and perhaps not applicable. This triage approach prevents overwhelm and allows you to focus on your energy strategically. For instance, if several people mention that you speak too quickly during presentations, that's immediately actionable. If someone suggests improving your storytelling abilities, that requires more development. And if feedback conflicts with your authentic self or core values, it might belong in the not applicable category. The most effective communicators maintain feedback journals or digital notes. After receiving input, document the specific feedback, its source, context, and your reflections on its validity. This practice creates a personal database of communication insights that reveals patterns over time. You might discover that you're consistently more effective in small groups than in large presentations, or that your listening skills deteriorate when you're under deadline pressure. These patterns highlight your highest leverage improvement areas. Changing communication habits requires deliberate practice, not just good intentions. Psychologist Kay Anders Erickson's research on expertise development shows that improvement comes from specific, focused practice on weak areas, not from general experience. If feedback reveals you interrupt others, create practice scenarios. During your next 3 team meetings, commit to not speaking until the current speaker has been silent for 2 seconds. This targeted approach accelerates progress far more effectively than vague intentions to interrupt less. Consider a golfer refining their swing. They don't just think about improving. They work with coaches, use video analysis, and practice specific movements repeatedly until muscle memory forms. Communication skills deserve similar respect and methodology. Break down complex feedback into specific behaviors you can practice systematically. Record yourself speaking, review the footage objectively, and make incremental adjustments based on what you observe and the feedback you've received. Feedback implementation works best with accountability structures. Share your communication goals with trusted colleagues, mentors, or friends, and ask them to observe your progress. Setting regular check-ins creates positive pressure to follow through on your intentions. These accountability partners can also provide real-time feedback on whether your adjustments are achieving the desired effect. Their observations offer an external perspective that balances your internal experience. One powerful way to integrate feedback is the implementation intention technique, developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer. Rather than making general commitments, "I'll be a better listener," create specific if-then plans. If someone shares an idea in a meeting, then I will ask at least one follow-up question before sharing my thoughts. This approach bridges the gap between intention and action by linking specific situations with pre-planned responses. Technology offers valuable tools for feedback implementation. Voice recording apps allow you to analyze your speaking patterns, pacing, and filler word usage. Video platforms let you observe your nonverbal communication. AI-powered communication tools can provide real-time feedback on everything from speaking pace to vocabulary diversity. These objective measures complement the subjective feedback you receive from others, creating a more complete improvement picture. Feedback represents the bridge between who you are as a communicator today and who you could become tomorrow. By shifting your perspective from defensive to growth-orientated, developing skillful feedback reception techniques, and implementing changes systematically, you transform feedback from a dreaded experience into a powerful catalyst for continuous improvement. The communicator who embraces this process isn't better prepared for single conversations. They're positioned for lifelong growth in connecting with others authentically and effectively. The growth cycle. Feedback as your communication catalyst. Effective communication isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey of refinement. Throughout this chapter, we've explored how feedback serves as the critical mechanism that powers this journey forward. By transforming our relationship with feedback from one of defensiveness to opportunity, we unlock accelerated growth in our conversational abilities. The most masterful communicators understand that feedback is simply information, not judgment of their worth. When we separate our ego from the feedback process, we create space for genuine improvement. Rather than hearing criticism as an attack on our identity, we can process it as valuable data that illuminates our blind spots. Remember that seeking feedback proactively demonstrates strength, not weakness. Those who actively pursue input from others show remarkable self-awareness and commitment to growth. This willingness to be vulnerable, paradoxically, makes you appear more confident in social situations, as others recognize and respect your dedication to improvement. The feedback integration process we've outlined provides a practical framework for turning insights into action. By developing the discernment to filter constructive feedback from unhelpful criticism, you gain the ability to selectively implement changes that authentically enhance your communication style without compromising your unique voice. Mastery comes through iteration. Each conversation becomes both a practice ground and a learning opportunity when viewed through the lens of constructive feedback. The minor adjustments you make based on thoughtful reflection compound over time, transforming your communication effectiveness in ways that might seem subtle day to day, but profound when measured across months and years. As you move forward, carry with you the understanding that feedback is truly the bridge between where your communication skills are today and where they could be tomorrow. Your willingness to cross this bridge repeatedly, to seek, receive, process, and implement feedback will distinguish you from those who remain trapped in patterns of ineffective communication. The mirror of feedback, when approached with openness and intention, doesn't just reflect who you are as a communicator, it reveals who you are becoming. And in that revealing lies the power to transform not just your conversations, but the depth and quality of your relationships with everyone you encounter. Chapter 4: Mastering the Conversation Flow. From small talk to lasting impact, the invisible power of conversation flow. In a world where first impressions can determine opportunities, mastering the art of conversation is not merely a social nicety. It's a critical life skill. Think about the last time you were captivated by someone's ability to guide a discussion. The seamless transitions, the natural rhythm, and the way they made complex ideas accessible while keeping you engaged. This wasn't accidental. Behind every meaningful exchange lies a deliberate orchestration that few recognize, but everyone responds to. Conversation is the currency of human connection, yet many of us struggle with its natural flow. We've all experienced those painful moments, the awkward silences, the interruptions that derail promising discussions, or the inability to gracefully exit a conversation that has run its course. These moments aren't just uncomfortable. They represent missed opportunities for deeper connections and personal advancement. The ability to maintain conversation flow directly impacts how others perceive our competence, likability, and leadership potential. The quality of your conversation flow can determine the trajectory of relationships, both personal and professional. Research consistently shows that people who master conversational dynamics are more likely to be promoted, trusted with important projects, and invited into valuable networks. This isn't surprising when we consider that effective communication serves as a reliable proxy for intelligence, emotional awareness, and social capability, qualities universally valued across contexts. What separates forgettable exchanges from memorable ones isn't just what is said, but how the conversation unfolds. The previous chapters have equipped you with foundational elements of communication, establishing rapport, reading body language, and developing active listening skills. This chapter builds upon these fundamentals by focusing on the dynamic architecture of conversation itself. We'll explore how to create and sustain momentum, navigate through different topics with intention, and conclude interactions in ways that strengthen connections rather than simply ending them. The 3 dimensions of conversational mastery. The techniques we'll cover address 3 critical dimensions of conversation flow. First, you'll learn specific strategies for initiating discussions that naturally invite engagement, maintaining momentum through peaks and valleys, and concluding conversations with purpose and grace. Second, we'll examine the psychological principles that keep exchanges focused and meaningful, helping you avoid the common pitfalls that lead to awkwardness or disengagement. Finally, we'll connect these skills directly to tangible outcomes in your life, showing how refined conversation abilities create cascading opportunities in both social and professional spheres. The distinction between functional conversations and transformative ones often come down to nuance. Small adjustments in how you guide discussions can dramatically alter their impact. Consider the difference between a networking event where you collected business cards versus one where you made genuine connections that led to collaborations. The information exchanged might have been similar, but the quality of the conversational flow determined which relationships flourished beyond that initial meeting. By the conclusion of this chapter, you'll possess a comprehensive framework for navigating any conversational context with confidence and skill. These abilities represent the culmination of everything we've explored throughout this audiobook, from overcoming social anxiety to reading subtle emotional cues to communicating with authentic presence. The techniques you're about to learn don't just improve isolated interactions. They transform your fundamental relationship with communication itself. When mastered, these skills create a positive feedback loop where each successful exchange builds confidence for the next, gradually expanding your capacity for meaningful connection in every area of life. When words become doors. James Hendricks sat alone at the far end of the crowded bar, watching people connect with an ease that had always eluded him. The amber light caught the condensation on his glass as he traced patterns through the moisture. 3 tables away, a group erupted in laughter. He studied them, the way they leaned into each other's words, the natural ebb and flow of their exchange. The conversation seemed to dance between them, never faltering, never stumbling into that awkward silence he knew too well. "You've been sitting here watching people all night?" The bartender placed a bowl of pretzels near James's elbow. She had kind eyes, crow's feet that deepened when she smiled. "Just observing the masters at work," James replied, nodding toward the animated group. The words felt stiff in his mouth. He always overthought these moments, measuring each syllable before releasing it. The bartender followed his gaze. "That's Sally Winters, marketing director at Meridian Tech. She networks like breathing." She wiped down the counter with practice strokes. "Heard she started as a receptionist 10 years ago." James remembered the email from his boss earlier that day. The promotion he'd been angling for had gone to Richards from accounting. "Better team player," his boss had written. "More connected across departments." The words had carved a hollow space beneath his ribs. James was brilliant with systems, with numbers, with solutions, but he faltered with people. The air at the bar felt suddenly thick, heavy with missed opportunities. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the windows. The sound reminded him of the book sitting in his briefcase, the one his sister had given him for his birthday. The Art of Meaningful Conversation, with its promising subtitle about transforming social interactions into career advancements. He scoffed initially. Social formulas seemed contrived, artificial. But watching Sally Winters work the room, seeing how people gravitated toward her energy, he wondered if there might be something to it. The way she ended a conversation with one group before seamlessly joining another struck him as both calculated and natural, like a dance you could learn with enough practice. The group near Sally burst into another round of laughter. One man clapped, another on the shoulder, leaning in to hear better over the music that had grown louder. James caught fragments of their conversation, something about sailing, about a near disaster turned funny in retrospect. He noticed how they built upon each other's stories, how they asked questions that kept the narrative moving forward. No one checked their phone. No one glanced toward the door. They existed entirely in that moment, in that exchange. James thought about tomorrow's department meeting. He had prepared his usual detailed analysis, the spreadsheets and projections that would go unappreciated. But maybe there was more to it. Maybe what separated him from Sally Winters wasn't just personality, but skill. A learnable, practical skill. He pulled the book from his briefcase and opened it to the first chapter. Beginnings. The art of breaking ice without drowning. The metaphor made him smile, despite himself. The bartender slid past, noting the book with a raised eyebrow. Light reading? James hesitated, then decided to practice what the first paragraph preached. Honest engagement rather than deflection. Trying to figure out why some people make connections so easily, while I'm still standing on the shore. The omission felt strange on his tongue. Vulnerable, but somehow freeing. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. The trick is caring about the answer when you ask a question. She tapped the cover of his book. The rest is just details. As the night deepened and the crowd thinned, James considered the conversations he'd had that day. The clipped exchanges, the professional formalities, the moments he'd retreated into silence rather than risk saying the wrong thing. How different might his career look if he'd mastered this invisible art years ago? If he'd understood that conversation wasn't just social pleasantry, but the architecture of opportunity? What invisible bridges had failed to materialize because he couldn't maintain the delicate thread of meaningful exchange? The art of starting and ending conversations. Conversations are the lifeblood of human connection. They build bridges between strangers, deepen relationships between friends, and create opportunities in professional settings. Yet for many people, knowing how to start a conversation, and perhaps more importantly, how to end one, remains a mystery. Think of a conversation as a dance. When you begin, there's a moment of finding your rhythm together. One person leads, then the other person responds, establishing a pattern. The most engaging conversations have this natural flow, where each participant knows when to step forward with a thought and when to step back and listen. Even without formal training, skilled conversationalists instinctively understand these rhythms. Starting a conversation effectively requires a blend of confidence and genuine interest. A simple observation about your shared environment often works well. This coffee shop always has the best playlist, don't you think? Or you might comment on something specific about the person. That's an interesting pin on your jacket. Does it have a story? These opening lines create immediate common ground without feeling forced. Maintaining conversation flow is where many people struggle. When conversations stall, it's often because participants aren't actively listening. Active listening isn't just waiting for your turn to speak. It's absorbing what the other person says and responding thoughtfully. Ask follow-up questions that show you're engaged. What was it like to live in Barcelona? How did you feel when that happened? These questions invite the other person to share more deeply. The art of conversation also includes knowing when and how to pivot topics. When you sense a subject has run its course, you can transition with phrases like, "That reminds me," or "Speaking of," followed by your new direction. These verbal bridges help conversations evolve naturally without awkward stops and starts. Just as important as beginning a conversation is knowing how to end one gracefully. Many people find themselves trapped in conversations because they don't know how to exit. Clear conclusion signals help both parties. Phrases like, "I should let you get back to your day," or "It was great catching up, but I need to prepare for my afternoon meeting," provides a natural endpoint. Always acknowledge the value of the conversation. "I really enjoyed hearing about your trip," or "Thanks for sharing your perspective on that project." In professional settings, ending a conversation can include a future-focused comment. "Let's connect again soon to discuss that proposal further." Or, "I'd love to hear more about your work with that client sometime." This leaves the door open for continued relationship building while respecting time boundaries. Body language plays a crucial role in conversation beginnings and endings. When starting, maintain an open posture, uncrossed arms, good eye contact, and a genuine smile. When concluding, subtle shifts like standing up slightly straighter, gathering your belongings, or glancing briefly toward an exit signal your intention to wrap up. As with any skill, becoming adept at conversation flow requires practice. Each interaction is an opportunity to refine your approach. Notice what works and what doesn't. Pay attention to how others respond to your conversation starters and exits. The most natural conversationalists have simply mastered these techniques through repetition and attention. The ability to smoothly initiate, maintain, and conclude conversations isn't just a social nicety, it's a fundamental skill that opens doors to deeper connections and new opportunities. Navigating the delicate balance of focused conversations. Keeping conversations on track without seeming controlling is a delicate art. When dialogue meanders too far from its purpose, both parties can feel their time is being wasted. Yet conversations that feel too rigid or scripted lack the human connection we crave. The sweet spot lies in finding balance, allowing natural flow while gently steering toward meaningful exchange. One of the primary challenges in maintaining focused conversations is managing distractions. These can be external, like noise or interruptions, or internal, such as the temptation to check your phone or mentally rehearse your next point instead of listening. Creating a bubble of attention around your conversation partner signals respect and encourages them to reciprocate. Position yourself to minimize environmental distractions when possible, and practice keeping your attention fully present. Think of a focused conversation as a river with gentle banks. The banks provide direction and shape, preventing the water from spreading too thin, while still allowing movement and life within. Too restrictive, and the river becomes a sterile canal. Too loose, and it becomes a formless marsh. The best conversationalists create these invisible banks that guide without constraining. Asking quality questions is perhaps the most potent tool for maintaining conversational focus. Open-ended questions that begin with what, how, or why invite thoughtful responses rather than one-word answers. When someone begins to drift off topic, a well-placed question can gently redirect. That's interesting. Going back to what you mentioned about the project challenges, how did you approach the timeline issues? The skill of redirection without interruption requires sensitivity. If someone is sharing something deeply personal or emotionally important, abruptly changing the subject can feel dismissive. Instead, acknowledge their contribution before steering back. I appreciate you sharing that experience. It makes me think about the original issue we were discussing with the team dynamics. Nonverbal cues play a crucial role in conversation focus. Maintaining appropriate eye contact signals engagement. Nodding occasionally shows you're following along. Slight shifts in posture can indicate transition points in the conversation. Learning to both read and consciously utilize these subtle signals helps conversations flow naturally while staying on track. Silence is a powerful yet underutilized conversational tool. Many people rush to fill quiet moments, often derailing the conversation in their desperation to avoid awkwardness. Comfortable silence gives both parties space to reflect. It allows deeper thoughts to surface. Developing comfort with brief pauses can dramatically improve your conversation quality. When miscommunication occurs, and it inevitably will, address it directly but gently. Phrases like, "I think I might have misunderstood your point about," or, "just to make sure we're on the same page," can clarify without assigning blame. This prevents the conversation from proceeding on faulty assumptions that could lead to greater misunderstandings later. The pace of conversation significantly impacts its focus. Speaking too rapidly can overwhelm listeners, while excessive slowness might cause their attention to wander. Pay attention to your partner's processing speed and try to match it. If you notice their eyes glazing over, you might be sharing too much information too quickly. If they seem impatient, you might need to pick up the tempo. Even the most focused conversations benefit from brief moments of levity or personal connection. These aren't distractions, but rather strengthening elements that build rapport. A short personal anecdote or appropriate moments of humor can actually enhance focus by refreshing attention and building connection, much like how a short break can improve study productivity. What would change in your personal and professional life if every conversation you had was not just pleasant, but purposeful and clearly understood? The Conversational Flow Framework. The Conversational Flow Framework provides a systematic approach to mastering dialogue in any situation. By breaking conversations into 3 distinct phases: initiation, continuation, and conclusion, this framework helps you navigate social interactions with confidence and purpose. Initiation phase, creating strong beginnings. The initiation phase is your conversation's foundation. How you begin sets the tone for everything that follows. Effective initiations accomplish 2 key objectives. They establish a connection and create immediate engagement. Connection begins with approachability. Before words are exchanged, your body language communicates volumes. An open posture, appropriate eye contact, and a genuine smile signal that you're receptive to interaction. These nonverbal cues often determine whether others feel comfortable engaging with you in the first place. For verbal openers, context matters tremendously. In professional settings, referencing shared work experiences or industry news creates immediate relevance. What did you think about the quarterly report? In social settings, environmental observations often work well. This venue has amazing architecture. Have you been here before? The best openers feel natural rather than rehearsed. Open-ended questions prove particularly effective in the initiation phase. Questions that require more than yes/no answers invite elaboration and demonstrate genuine interest. What brings you to this conference? Will generate more conversation than, is this your first time at this conference? These questions also provide valuable information about your conversation partner that helps guide the dialogue forward. Continuation phase, maintaining momentum. The continuation phase is where conversations either flourish or falter. This critical middle section requires active engagement techniques to keep dialogue flowing naturally. The 3 A's of engagement serve as pillars of this phase. Ask thoughtful follow-up questions that demonstrate your listening. Affirm the other person's contributions through verbal and nonverbal acknowledgement. Add relevant insights or experiences that build upon shared topics. Turn-taking rhythm becomes essential during continuation. Conversations that become one-sided quickly lose energy. Skilled conversationalists develop an intuitive sense of when to contribute and when to listen. If you notice you've been speaking for more than a minute without a response, it's likely time to pass the conversational baton with a question or invitation for input. Handling silence effectively distinguishes advanced conversationalists. Rather than viewing pauses as failures, recognize them as natural processing moments. Brief silences allow both parties to absorb information and formulate thoughtful responses. If a silence extends uncomfortably, gentle prompts like, "What are your thoughts on that?" can reestablish flow without seeming forced. Topic transitions require particular finesse. When you sense a subject has run its course, bridge to related areas using connecting phrases. "That reminds me of," or "speaking of." These nonverbal bridges maintain conversational coherence while allowing natural evolution of subject matter. Conclusion phase, ending with purpose. How conversations end leaves lasting impressions. The conclusion phase requires as much attention as the beginning, yet many people neglect this critical stage. Timing your exit requires social awareness. Watch for natural conclusion signals: topic exhaustion, fulfillment of conversation purpose, time constraints, or energy depletion. When these signs appear, moving toward a conclusion honors both participants' needs. Graceful conclusions include 3 elements. Acknowledgement of value. I've really enjoyed hearing about your project. Clear closing signal. I should let you get back to your afternoon. Future orientation when appropriate. Let's continue this discussion next week. The manner of your exit should match the relationship context. Professional settings might require more formal conclusion language, while informal social interactions allow more casual exits. In either case, sincerity matters. Disingenuous conclusions feel abrupt regardless of the words chosen. Contextual adaptations. The conversational flow framework flexes to accommodate different settings and relationship types. With strangers, more time in the initiation phase builds necessary comfort. With established relationships, you might move more quickly to continuation, referencing shared history as connection points. Group conversations require additional adaptations. In groups, you become both participant and facilitator, helping ensure balanced participation. Techniques like directing questions to quieter members or acknowledging interrupted speakers help maintain healthy group dynamics within the framework. Virtual conversations present unique challenges to flow. Without full access to nonverbal cues, greater verbal explicitness becomes necessary. Signaling topic transitions, checking for understanding, and managing turn-taking require more deliberate attention in digital environments. Integration of components. The 3 phases, initiation, continuation, and conclusion, operate as an integrated system rather than isolated segments. Each phase influences the others, creating a unified conversational experience. Strong initiations make continuations easier. Skillful continuations set up natural conclusions. And graceful conclusions leave positive impressions that facilitate future initiations. The framework operates as a positive feedback loop. As you develop proficiency in each phase, your overall conversational competence increases. This growing mastery creates confidence that further enhances your abilities, creating upward momentum in your communication skills. Adaptability remains central to the framework's success. Rather than providing rigid scripts, the conversational flow framework offers flexible principles that you can apply in unique ways based on your personality and specific situations. This adaptability ensures authenticity in your interactions. Practical applications. Professional networking becomes significantly more effective when the conversational flow framework guides your interactions. Instead of aimless small talk or awkward self-promotion, you can create meaningful exchanges that showcase your strengths naturally while building a genuine connection. Personal relationships deepen through skillful application of the framework. By creating space for both sharing and listening, you demonstrate value for the other person while still expressing your own thoughts and feelings. This balanced exchange builds emotional intimacy over time. Even difficult conversations benefit from a framework structure. When addressing conflicts or sensitive topics, clear initiation establishes purpose. Thoughtful continuation manages emotional dynamics. And intentional conclusion ensures mutual understanding of outcomes and next steps. Advanced implementation. As you gain proficiency with the basic framework, advanced applications emerge. You'll develop an intuitive sense of when to extend certain phases based on conversational needs. Some interactions benefit from longer initiation to establish sufficient trust. Others require extended conclusion to ensure proper follow-through on discussed actions. Cultural adaptations become vital as you interact with diverse individuals. Different cultures have varying expectations around conversation pacing, directness, personal disclosure, and conclusion protocols. Awareness of these differences allows you to adjust your framework implementation appropriately. The framework ultimately becomes internalized rather than consciously applied. With sufficient practice, these principles transform from deliberate techniques into natural conversation instincts. This internalization allows authentic expression while maintaining effective structure. By mastering the 3 phases of conversation, initiation, continuation, and conclusion, you not only avoid awkwardness, but also actively create opportunities through meaningful connections. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to leave a positive impression, deepen relationships, and open doors to new possibilities in both personal and professional realms. Leveraging conversations for life advancement. The way you converse shapes how others perceive you. This simple truth has profound implications for your life trajectory. People who master conversation don't just enjoy smoother social interactions. They create tangible opportunities that others miss. Each conversation becomes a potential gateway to new relationships, career advancements, and personal growth. Consider the professional world. Studies show that technical skills alone rarely determine career success. Instead, the ability to clearly articulate ideas, build rapport, and navigate social dynamics often separate those who advance from those who stagnate. A well-handled conversation with a senior colleague might reveal a mentorship opportunity. A thoughtful exchange at an industry event could lead to a job offer. These pivotal moments aren't just lucky breaks. They're the natural result of conversational competence. Your conversation skills function like compound interest in relationships. Small positive interactions accumulate over time, building trust and goodwill with others. Think of each successful conversation as making a small deposit into your social capital account. These deposits grow gradually until one day, when you need support, guidance, or opportunity, you have a network of people predisposed to help you because of the positive impression you've consistently created. Think of conversations as doors. Each interaction presents an entryway to something new, a connection, an idea, an opportunity. Poor conversationalists walk past these doors without noticing them. Average conversationalists see the doors but lack the keys to open them. Master conversationalists not only recognize these opportunities, but have developed the skills to walk through them confidently. The difference in life outcomes between these groups is enormous over time. Professional environments particularly reward strong conversation skills. Leadership positions inevitably involve guiding discussions, managing team dynamics, and communicating vision effectively. By developing these abilities early, you position yourself as leadership material long before seeking promotion. Your bosses and colleagues will naturally begin to see you handling responsibilities that require advanced communication skills. Social settings equally benefit from refined conversation abilities. The person who can engage meaningfully with diverse groups naturally becomes a connector, someone who brings people together and builds community. These connectors enjoy richer social lives not because they're more extroverted, but because they've developed the skills to create meaningful interactions across different social contexts. The impact extends beyond traditional networking. Even routine conversations with neighbors, service providers, or casual acquaintances transform when approached with intention and skill. These everyday interactions become more enjoyable and often yield unexpected benefits. from local recommendations to community involvement opportunities. The quality of your daily life improves noticeably when ordinary conversations become consistently positive exchanges. There's a misconception that impactful conversation requires extraordinary charisma or natural talent. The reality is more democratic. Conversation skills can be systematically developed by anyone willing to practice. The techniques in this chapter aren't magical secrets. They're practical tools accessible to anyone. What separates exceptional conversationalists isn't innate ability, but deliberate practice and conscious improvement. Making lasting impressions doesn't require grand gestures. Often, it's the person who remembers your name. Asks thoughtful follow-up questions about topics you previously mentioned, or expresses genuine interest in your perspective who stands out. These seemingly small actions demonstrate respect and attentiveness, qualities that leave strong positive impressions long after conversations end. By developing mastery in starting conversations confidently, maintaining their flow naturally, and concluding them gracefully, you can transform casual interactions into meaningful connections, everyday discussions into opportunities, and social situations into pathways for personal and professional advancement. Closing reflections. The art of conversation is ultimately a dance of connection. As we've explored throughout this chapter, your ability to masterfully guide a conversation from beginning to end dramatically shapes how people perceive and remember you. The true power lies not just in what you say, but in how thoughtfully you orchestrate the entire interaction. The techniques we've discussed for initiating conversations with confidence, maintaining engaging dialogue, and concluding interactions gracefully aren't merely social niceties. They're essential tools that create lasting impressions. Remember that awkward silences and conversational missteps aren't failures, but opportunities to redirect and deepen connection. By implementing the focusing techniques we've covered, you transform potentially uncomfortable moments into bridges of understanding. What separates truly exceptional communicators is their ability to make others feel genuinely valued. When you master conversation flow, you're not just exchanging information. You're creating an experience that leaves others feeling understood and appreciated. This skill opens doors that might otherwise remain closed, whether in building meaningful friendships or advancing professionally. The journey to conversation mastery we've undertaken throughout this audiobook began with conquering the internal barriers of self-doubt and anxiety. We progressed through understanding the nuanced language of nonverbal cues and emotional intelligence. We've explored how to adapt your communication style to different personalities and contexts. And now, with the conversation flow techniques in this chapter, you possess the complete toolkit for transformative communication. The most meaningful connections in life often begin with a single, well-navigated conversation. As you apply these principles, you'll find yourself creating opportunities where none seemed to exist before. Colleagues will seek your input more frequently. New acquaintances will feel like old friends. Professional networks will expand naturally through the strength of your communication skills. Remember that mastering conversation is an ongoing practice. Each interaction offers a chance to refine your approach. Be patient with yourself as you implement these strategies, and celebrate the small victories along the way. The confidence you develop through consistently applying these skills will become self-reinforcing, each successful conversation building momentum for the next. The transformation from anxiety-filled communication to confident connection doesn't happen overnight, but it absolutely happens. Trust the process we've outlined throughout this audiobook. With deliberate practice and self-compassion, you'll soon find yourself engaging effortlessly with others in ways that once seemed impossible. Your journey to becoming someone who can truly talk to anyone is now complete in theory. But the real adventure begins as you step into the world and put these principles into practice. The meaningful relationships and opportunities that await will be well worth the effort you've invested. The next conversation you have is your opportunity to begin. Final words. You've reached the end of our journey together, but in many ways, this is just the beginning of yours. Throughout this audiobook, we've explored the intricate dance of human connection, from conquering conversation fears to building meaningful relationships that stand the test of time. True communication mastery isn't about memorizing clever lines or manipulating others. It's about authentic self-expression while genuinely connecting with those around you. The strategies we've covered work because they're grounded in understanding human psychology, not because they're tricks or shortcuts. Think back to where you were when you first listened to this audiobook. Perhaps social situations filled you with dread. Maybe you struggled to move beyond surface-level conversations. Or possibly, you simply wanted to enhance connections in your personal and professional life. Wherever you started, you now possess a robust toolkit to transform how you engage with others. The core principles we've explored, active listening, emotional intelligence, body language awareness, and authentic self-expression, form the foundation of all meaningful human connections. By mastering these elements, you've developed the ability to read situations accurately, respond appropriately, and create genuine rapport with almost anyone you meet. Remember that becoming a skilled communicator is not about changing who you are, but rather about bringing your authentic self forward in the most effective way. Introverts don't need to become extroverts to connect meaningfully. Quiet, thoughtful individuals can make profound connections through depth rather than volume of conversation. Your next step is simple yet challenging. Practice. Communication skills develop through consistent application in real-world situations. Start with low-pressure environments. Perhaps a casual chat with a store clerk or a conversation with a friendly coworker. As your confidence grows, gradually challenge yourself with more complex social scenarios. I encourage you to revisit specific chapters as needed when facing particular challenges. Struggling with difficult conversations? Return to those strategies. Finding it hard to break the ice at networking events? Refresh your memory on those techniques. It's important to acknowledge that no single audiobook can address every unique communication scenario you'll encounter. Cultural differences, individual personalities, and specific context will always introduce variables that require adaptation. The principles in this audiobook provide a framework, but your own emotional intelligence and situational awareness will guide the specifics of application. One limitation worth noting is that communication continues to evolve with technology and cultural shifts. The fundamental human psychology behind connection remains constant, but the channels and social norms change. Stay curious, remain observant, and continue to grow your understanding of how people communicate in different contexts. The greatest reward awaiting you is the rich tapestry of human connection that becomes possible when communication barriers fall away. Deeper friendships, more satisfying romantic relationships, career opportunities that open through meaningful, professional connections, the ability to resolve conflicts with grace. These aren't just nice-to-have benefits. They form the foundation of a fulfilling life. Your journey to communication mastery is ongoing. There will be missteps and awkward moments. Embrace them as learning opportunities rather than failures. Each conversation is practice for the next one. With time, what once required conscious effort will become second nature. The world needs more people who can genuinely connect, who can bridge divides through understanding, and who can transform superficial interactions into meaningful moments. By improving your own communication skills, you contribute to a more connected, compassionate world, one conversation at a time. Go forward with confidence. Listen deeply. Speak authentically. Connect meaningfully. The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The best way to understand people is to listen to them. Ralph Nichols.
We appreciate you tuning in to one of our captivating audiobooks. For more immersive experiences, here is another audiobook we're certain you'll enjoy. Don't forget to show your support by liking this video, sharing what you loved about this audiobook in the comments section below, and subscribing for more captivating audiobooks like this. Thanks for being a part of our audiobook community.